Oh yeah, Geogreens. We are located here at 1 North Johnson Street in Hamilton, New Jersey. I want to say about 30 to 40 minutes outside of Camden or so, depending on what part you're from. So I've been in hydroponics for about 6 years or so. Everything is self-taught. So originally I got a degree in architecture, civil engineering, and environmental science. But I was always an environmental guy. I got the environmental degree back when everything was green thumb and sustainability, but no one really knew what the industry was going to become. So I started experimenting with different types of environmental industries. So like renewable energy, solar panels before it got too big, wind energy, recycled water. I took classes in California. And right around the corner from where I was staying at, there was a hydroponics shop. So I went in there, grabbed a bunch of supplies, grabbed some materials, took it home, started growing, and really started growing, seeing more customers come back, asking me more about microgreens, and just kept evolving the company from microgreens to baby greens to fully grown greens to now introducing shooter drinks that we use our microgreens and fresh fruit juice as well, and popsicles too for kids. So wanted to really, push off and get more people involved with microgreens because of how healthier they are to the general people. My favorite product, I have one that I like to eat. One is Pak Joy. Pak Joy is extremely juicy and like a better form of a lettuce. I like to grow basil though, because basil absorbs so much water hydroponically, so the roots get about 5 feet long as the plant continues to grow. So seeing how the roots absorb so much water, seeing how much they start to feed off one another is extremely interesting. So I like to eat Pak Joy, but I like to grow basil more and more in here too. Favorite part of the job, I would say, is getting people's immediate reaction when they see what we're doing over here, growing hydroponically, growing indoors, the amount of food we can produce, whereas again, 3 tons just within a 2,000 square feet footprint. So getting that reaction, also being able to educate more people on healthier eating, educate more people on microgreens and the benefits to hydroponics, where it being a more efficient way of farming versus the conventional way of farming. So definitely that engagement and getting the reactions from the people that come by. Well, everything starts with growing medium, similar to conventional farming outside, where you have the soil. Again, indoors, we're not doing any soil. Everything is water and hydroponically grown within water solution that has nutrients in it. So there's different types of growing mediums. We use rock wool here. We've been very successful with this. So again, this is just a volcanic sediment, the purest form of a soil-based type of growing medium with other minerals that spun up real fast and heated real fast. And out comes this type of insulation type. It feels like insulation, a little spongy, but it's insulation type material that's a growing medium. And inside of this small divot here is where you put the seeds at. So the first phase is when you want to get the seed to go from a seed to a seedling. That's just getting the shell of the seed just to pop. You don't want to introduce any type of light to it. You don't want to introduce any food to it, because too early on it's going to shock the seed and it'll kill the plant. But you do want to introduce some type of humidity. That's going to crack the shell for the seed to turn to a seedling. After it does that, then you bring it to a little bit of a light and you start to feed it a little more. So you have this rock wool piece, and it starts to turn into these, where you start to see the roots growing down here and the rock wool around it. And right here is where all the produce is located at. So every type, this is a microgreen. Every produce looks like this before it starts to get big. A lot of people think that this is a completely different plant. Nope, every single plant looks like this. Then it gets big, and then it starts to turn to what you're used to with the lettuce and the spinach and the arugula and all those other types of produce. So everyone's going to look like this. So after you introduce the rock wool here, you start to introduce a little bit of light to it. A little bit of light, but it needs to be intense light. That's going to wake the plant up. That basically tells it to start getting stronger, start to eat the food, start to get green, and start to get the roots to develop a lot more. So it sits here for a little bit of time just so that all can happen, just so the roots and everything can get stronger and the plant can start to do photosynthesis, which is what the plant is eating, the food or whatnot. After that, then you transfer it or you transplant it over to a different section, another light pattern, where it's not as, where the lights on the next phase isn't as strong as this one, but they are strong enough to tell the plant to relax a little more, to keep eating, but you can relax and you can keep growing for about 20 days or so until it's ready to be harvested, until it's ready to be eaten. So before we go from this phase to that phase, I'll walk you guys over to where the water is introduced from our hydroponics facility. So here is where we're taking the water from the town, from the city. Similar to any other city, there's always some type of fresh water that's coming from a building somewhere. So this is where it comes into our facility here at Geogreens. The only problem with that is that when you have city water, it's not always the best water for plants to grow. So in our case, we had to take away the chlorine that's in water, and we had to make the water a little bit softer. So from here, it goes through this little system here where it filters out the chlorine. Filters out the chlorine, any like little gnats or bugs or anything that may get into city water too, this takes care of all of that. From this part, it drops into this drum. It drops into this drum because the water still has all those minerals that we talked about. So in order to take care of that, you got to introduce, or we had to put in a fresh natural chemical into the water here, and that takes care of all those little minerals that's inside of the water too. And then from this phase, this where it gets cooled, is a pump inside of it. So there's a pump that pumps it up. See this white tube that goes overhead, and it drops it back into the reservoir. So overhead, you see the water tube comes into this big reservoir right here. So that pump will go off every so often throughout the week just to refill the water. So the plants always get enough water that they need. And this is an example where we have all the produce growing here. So we have spinach down here. We have romaine lettuce up here. You guys can't see it up here, but this is kale that's growing up here. This is collard greens here. This is more spinach, and this is a different type of lettuce here. This is butterhead lettuce. So it's different types of lettuces on these trays. And then the last thing I want to show you guys, which a lot of people aren't used to, is when you see roots, you always think of roots and you see them in soil where there's a lot of dirt around the roots and everything. Well, in hydroponics, it looks a lot different. So in hydroponics, grab it, that's what roots look like in hydroponics. See all the clear roots? This is where you can touch them. You can even put them a little bit. You don't yank them, but if you can touch them, you can grab them. That's how you know they're nice and strong and they're healthy. If they start to get real dark and brown and nasty, that's something that you don't want. That's something called root rot. That's where the roots are not healthy. They're not getting enough oxygen. So they'll just start to be nasty and slimy and they'll just slide off. But here, they're nice and healthy and I can pull and tug at them. And even inside, you can see the water that is growing inside of. You see the nutrients, the water and the nutrients inside. And this will just be here until it's time to be harvested. And I can show you guys how we do harvest. So we use these pruners. Always be sanitary, always be careful when you have these because they're extremely sharp. But you always wipe them off to make sure there's no dirt, no contaminants, nothing on top of them. So we always clean them first. And same thing with any services. When it comes to you handling food, you have to be extremely sanitary, extremely safe, and extremely clean, because otherwise that's how you get nasty things on your foods, and it's never a good thing when you have that and people notice that it's on your produce or your foods. So you always clean off all the surfaces that the produce is going to touch all the time. All right, so what we use, we are environmental all the way through. So we use packaging that's environmentally friendly and that can be recycled. So this comes from San Francisco all the way in California. So this whole thing can just be recycled. We don't like using all the plastic and the plastic bags and the clam shells that everybody has at supermarkets. So to get away from that, we use this type of packaging. It's all paper recyclable packaging. So when you're harvesting hydroponically, you're harvesting indoors, the trick is you want to get as much of the produce that you can. So you gotta, and it grows very fast. So you got to get around it. You got to grab as much as you can within this one little plug of that rock wool. Once you get it, you got to harvest above the rock wool. So you leave the plug in place and you snip everything off. When you snip it off, this is all the lettuce that you have. And the idea is at this phase, you want to make sure when you're looking around, there's no pests, which there shouldn't be because we're indoors. And you want to make sure there's no soggy, nasty leaves, because sometimes because lettuce is very soft, it can get very soggy if it doesn't get enough circulation on the top. It doesn't look like we have anything here, but we do have these little roots that are there. So we'll cut those off so we can have each individual leaf by itself. Alright, once we have all the leaves, everything's nice, fresh and healthy, just pack it up, close it over top. You have underneath where it's breathable so the plants can still continue to grow, or not grow, sorry, they can continue to breathe. And just package it up. Because we're growing the size that we are growing in this facility, there's certain things you have to have on your labels. So you take each one of these individual labels, we'll circle which produce it is, we'll put in when we harvest it, meaning which day we cut down, and we'll put an ID number, which is in our computer system. But it's an ID number and a harvest date. That way, once we drop it off and it's delivered, they always know who it came from and when it was harvested and how fresh it's going to last for. So we have different packages for these and other ones too. The collards and lettuce and different styles. So we'll just take each one off. Cover over top of the front of it so it can't be opened until somebody actually buys it and wants it. Put it over top. Inside, now everybody knows it's a leafy green. They know which they have when it was harvested, and they know it was grown hydroponically. They know it was in New Jersey, and they know that the whole packaging is completely recyclable. So we put everything on the package so everybody knows exactly what they're getting from us when they pick it up.